even though these are separate issues, I want to hear these together because the petition is exactly the same in both cases. And I see that Mr. Lee and Ms. Barnes are together in their response. I'll hear the cases together, but I'll decide them separately on their merits, right? And then also keep in mind that I have reviewed and read all the material that you filed. So your initial petition, I've read that. Any supplemental material, I've seen or read that. And if there's been a response filed, I've also seen and read that. So it's not necessary for you to repeat everything that you put into your petition. All right, you can refer me to specific parts of it that you think are important if you want to do that, but you don't have to restate everything or read everything because those matters are already in the record and I'll consider them. Okay, let's get started with your case. So can I have you, Ms. McCracken, and Mr. Lee and Ms. Barnes raise your right hand, please? Do each of you swear that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and Ms. Barnes and Mr. Lee as well? Okay, do you also swear that the testimony you give will be the truth? Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. McCracken, yes. Go ahead and present your side of it, and you can do so with regard to both Mr. Lee and Ms. Barnes, okay?
Okay. Well, 2 weeks ago, I filed an anti-harassment order, and I had presented a lot of evidence and testimony as to why we feel we need this. We have been dealing with threats from Mr. Lee for about 2.5 years after an incident with towing his van from our front yard. A lot of it consisted of very late in the evening, also while he was extremely intoxicated. Threats of I'm going to kill your family, that kind of nature. It has continued for the last 2.5 years, and just recently, within the month of July, stalking behavior almost had started. And it was with the help of Shannon Barnes with her vehicle, also her being present. And essentially they would sit in the vicinity of the home and make it known that they were watching our house, or it felt like they were watching our house. Like if we would look out the window, they would sit and wait at us. And that happened almost a week before I initially filed. We have called the police many times for this behavior, for these incidents, and they tell us to get an anti-harassment or some sort of protection order. And that is why I am here today to request a protection order. Behavior will cease, because physically asking them to leave us alone has not worked. And we feel that the only way to make that happen, to where if they don't follow the order, then some actual repercussions will take place to, I guess, make them understand that we are serious, that all we want is peace, quiet, and to be left alone and not have to deal with threats or any acts of violence which have previously taken place.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
In your petition, you described that Mr. Lee has made threats against you, and you describe some of those threats here again. But also in your petition, you've basically said that Ms. Barnes has facilitated Mr. Lee's doing this, and I'm not clear on what you mean by that.
Well, in being with him, either driving the vehicle and parking it within 20-30 feet of my house, to sitting with him and watching, or even walking down and sitting across the street from our house, herself, that is what I mean by facilitate, or even lending him the vehicle to carry out these activities that he is doing. And I'm not saying he can't borrow the car, but to participate in the odd, to me, it's odd behavior to just sit and watch somebody's home is rather concerning, or doesn't feel like he is attempting to stop him from these behaviors and essentially tell him to just leave it alone, it's not that big of a deal or something of that nature. But to participate as well for me is facilitating.
Okay. And how far away is their residence from your residence?
500 feet.
And that's out on DeVoe?
Correct.
Okay. All
We're
right.
a
Ms.
part.
McCracken, is there anything? I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say where they're presently parked along DeVoe Street is within 300 feet of my home and my front door currently.
Okay. All right. And Ms. McCracken, is there anything else that you feel like you need me to know before I make a decision or before I hear from them?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Barnes and Mr. Lee. It's up to you. Which one of you goes first?
I will, I guess. First off, I want to say that, I apologize if that's the threats that they are assuming that I'm doing it by helping him with anything, because we're not. Literally, the pictures that they've taken of my car is on the road facing my direction of my house, not their direction. And it's basically because I can't work on my car on my property because it's a rental property. So I have to actually go out on the road to do any repairs. That's exactly what we've been doing because my car's been having a heck of a time for over a year now.
In every photo that's they've sent out, you'll notice that the hood is up on the car.
Or we're have the car up on the curb because we're working on the tires.
Yes. We had no idea we were even being filmed or camera, and we really don't want anything to do with these people.
I didn't even know their names. I mean, really, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know their names. And the rocks that she's talking about that she thinks that I've sat on and across from her house, I was in a coma almost 2 years ago. I can't even walk that far. So I don't go down there to the rocks. I don't sit across from their house. And I've never, in any of the films that are like the pictures that they've taken, my car's not even by their house. It's actually down towards my house, my direction more. And I can prove that just by where we're parked right now. But I don't want to be that petty. I just want this over with. I don't want them to feel threatened because I'm not threatening them in any way. I would just like to go about my stuff. If I have to work on my car on my street, then I would like to work on my car on my street. But these guys have come out, well, not her so much, but her husband has come out screaming and yelling, threatening to bring guns out. I have a videotape of him trying to get me out of my car because him and his buddy were coming at me and Alan both. So I videotaped it. And I just don't know what to do anymore. I really don't. I don't want to live like this.
All right, Mr. Lee, let me ask you a question here because one of the allegations that Ms. McCracken has made is that you particularly, she said, have made threats to her. Do you want to respond to that?
I was angry when they illegally towed my van, and I won that in court. And I believe they're just upset that they had to pay the $1,600 towing fee. As far as that, they said that I pulled an iron rail out from under their house is ludicrous. I have a
Well, I'm sorry, pulled a
titanium
what?
bone in my arm here.
I didn't understand that
bone
earlier part. You said pulled something.
Oh, they said that I pulled an iron railing from their front porch in the statement that they put in. And there's no way I could do something like that. Like, I'm physically not capable of something like that. And as far as threatening to beat them up or anything, I'm a 55-year-old man who's crippled. These are young kids, livers, because it would take me a couple of days to die instead of just shooting to kill me. Their friend has cut my husband, sorry, I'm a little nervous, has cut Shannon off on the road in a red truck, who was also twice, who was also part of the whole towing thing. I don't wish to talk to these people. That is fine with me. We're staying away from each other, works fine. But as far as all this threatening and stalking, I have no reason to stalk them. I don't want to stalk them. Like Santa says, we didn't even know their names until today.
But I don't want them to feel threatened either, so I would
Right.
like them to know I'm doing car repairs, not trying to even.
You know, we have
acknowledge
nothing
them.
to do with them. We're not even thinking about them.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so Mr. Lee and Ms. Barnes, is there anything you feel like you need me to know, or excuse me, that you need to tell me before I make a decision?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right, I have reviewed the petition, excuse me. And as I said, the petition's the same against both respondents here. It's just both of them are included as respondents. I guess I do have a question. I meant to clarify this and I forgot to. The van towing incident. And the actual incident itself, not what happened afterwards. That occurred, that towing was in 2021. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that's what I read and I wanted to make sure that I read that correctly. Okay. All right. Well, here's how I decide this. The law requires, first of all, that Ms. McCracken is the petitioner here and all petitioners have the burden of proof. That means you have to prove your case, and the level of proof that's required is what's called the preponderance of the evidence. That means the greater weight of the evidence. And the things that you have to prove in order to be able to have the court issue an anti-harassment order is that there's a knowing and willful course of conduct directed at a specific person, in this case, Ms. McCracken, that seriously annoys, harasses, or is detrimental to them and would cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress, and which actually causes substantial emotional distress and serves no legitimate purpose. In addition to that, the order can't be based on somebody exercising their rights under the Constitution, like their First Amendment rights. Clearly threatening somebody would not be covered by constitutional rights. Now, in this case, I cannot find by preponderance of the evidence that unlawful harassment occurred. First of all, in assessing the testimony as between the parties, really, folks, I find you equally credible in terms of what you're telling me, what the facts are, what your perception of what happened is. And I have no reason to doubt any of you. I think there's probably a substantial difference between the two of you in interpretation as to what these events mean. And on top of that, I think there's clearly some lingering bad feelings, maybe is a fair way to put it, over the vehicle towing incident. I know the incident happened. I know it played out in court the way it's supposed to. But that's been since 2021. And if there were things said at the time, there certainly hasn't been any action based on that. So none of that is what I would refer to as current. So I don't find that there's been any reasonable suffering of substantial emotional distress here. The pictures that I've seen of in the petition of Ms. Barnes and Mr. Lee don't appear to show anything that's threatening or disturbing. They just look like pictures of people hanging around their cars and maybe working on them or sitting in them or something, but there's nothing untoward about any of it. So I just can't find, based on the evidence presented here in this hearing or previously in the pleadings, that warrants a finding of unlawful harassment, either against Ms. Barnes or against Mr. Lee. So the bottom line there after that explanation is that the petition in each case for unlawful harassment is denied.
Thank you.
Write up orders consistent with that, and then you will all be sent by the court clerk by email copies of the order. And in Mr. Lee's case, the previously granted temporary order expires now. All right, so for both of you, all of you, this will conclude your hearing for today.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Your Honor.
Thank you.